Everyone has a story to tell. Welcome to Dingotalk, where we explore the experiences that make us who we are. Here's your host, Carlo Guadagnino.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is Dingotalk. My guest this week is head coach Tom Zagorski. He's the head coach of Otterbein. Nice little dramatic pause there for you guys. I feel like I give you the same thing every week. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. Continue to watch. Hit the like and subscribe button. If you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast from, we appreciate you. Make sure you drop us a comment, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Follow us on the social medias, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. The only one different is the Instagram page. It's Dingo_Talk. Coach Zagorski. He was part of his playing days. He was part of the first class with Coach DeBlack, who we had from Case Western Reserve. He coached through his time at John Carroll, made an SEC appearance, and then now is the head coach of Otterbein and is very excited to be the head coach of Otterbein. And I think you're going to see that through his interview. It's a pretty long one, so I'm not going to keep you any longer because, like I said, it's a bit of a long interview. We cover a lot of things. So without further ado, this is Coach Tom Zagorski. What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is Dingo Talk. My guest this week is the head football coach at Otterbein, Coach Tom Zagorski. You see, I had to make sure I looked down and I underlined and did some things. We had to make sure we got it right. Coach, thank you for joining us.
Carlo, I appreciate it. I think we live in a world that we are afraid of vowels. So with your last name and my last name, we put it together. You know, we cost a lot on Old Wheel of Fortune, but people see those vowels, panic. At the end of the day, everything's usually phonetically correct. Take a step back, look at it. Don't be thrown off by different letters you don't use in a traditional day, and just roll with it, and you'll be in good shape.
Well, I'm glad, I do it before every episode. I ask the coach, hey, make sure you pronounce my last name. And the next line out of my mouth is, look at my last name. You understand why pronunciation correctly is important. So, Coach, we're going to do this the way we do every week. We're going to start with your playing days, and we're going to work our way through to now being the head coach of Otterbein. So first and foremost, 2004, why the choice to go to Case Western?
Honestly, it was the best school that recruited me academically. And I was a first-generation college student. Mom and dad didn't go to college. My dad was a cop in Northeast Ohio in a little town called the Village of North Randall, which was kind of a fun fact. Back in the 1980s, it was the largest mall in the United States before the Mall of America was built. And today, it's a huge Amazon shipping area across from a casino and a horse racetrack. But my parents, they were great providers in the sense of love, in the sense that we always had a roof over our head, that we never went to bed hungry. We never had the best shoes. We never had the best clothes. We never drove the nicest car, but we did have what we had, and we do great in appreciation for it. I think that's been really important in my life. And as I became a father, as I became a husband, as I became a leader of men, it was really important. But I went to Benedictine High School in Cleveland, Ohio, to take a step back to that. And Benedictine's a perennial power in Northeast Ohio. It's the only school in the state of Ohio that's won a state championship in every decade that they've granted a state championship at the Ohio High School Athletic Association level, which is a really unique deal. And I say that because I grew up in this tradition-rich high school, and I get recruited by a lot of different places. I could have walked on at Kent State or Youngstown State, a couple Division I schools, the old PWO, like, hey, you're not good enough, but like we'd like to have you be a tackling dummy. I was an all-state player at Benedictine and started 3 years there. And, on a good day, I might be 5'10". I think I was listed at 6'1" when I played. So I was one of those guys that I know who I was now as a coach. But as a kid, I was always upset about the recruiting process. Like, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm like, they did. These guys are pretty smart. So, especially as I climbed the ladder in this profession, I'm like, that's not what we're looking for. Is another Tommy Zagorski. But I say that because Case Western Reserve, it was kind of a unique experience. Derek Slush, who's the offensive coordinator there still today, was the high school coach at my high school when I was a freshman. And he leaves the high school to go coach at Case Western Reserve. So he leans over to me, and the one day I'm walking the halls, and he goes, hey, you do really well in school, right? And I said, yeah. And he goes, you ever think about going to Case? And I'm like, Case? Like, yeah, okay, cool. Just kept walking, like thinking about it. And I'm like, that's very nice of him. Well, he starts recruiting me. A guy named Joe Perella starts recruiting me, and Greg Debelak, who's the head coach there now. And I go through that process because they open these doors to, like, when I told people where I was going to school, they were like, "Whoa, you're looking at, Mickey Mouse Tech and East Popcorn State and Case." They're like, "Holy shit, like Case is a great school. Like, you should really
Mm-hmm.
consider it." And here was the telltale sign. I'm at YSU for a spring ball practice. This is going into my senior year. This is like March. Signing day's already passed. Like, I'm ready to go. Funny fact, go back. I was going to go to Dayton. I'm a Catholic kid, grew up, probably would have been a priest if I never met women. Like, I was ready to go in that capacity. But, I met my wife and it was the right calling for me. And the good Lord's chosen me to serve in a different way. But I say that because what's unique is I was going to go to Dayton. My financial aid package was what it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So now I'm sitting there and go, I can't take this much money out to go be a phys ed major and be a football coach at Dayton.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so what do? I go to the most expensive school, Case Western Reserve. But Coach Perella, Coach Debs, they stayed on me this entire process. Well, fast forward, I go to take this opportunity. I go to Case Western Reserve, and my high school guidance counselor, when I walked in, I go, "Yeah, I got into Case." He looks at my grades, he looks at my test score, he goes, "Are you sure you got into Case Western Reserve?" I go, "Yeah, I got into Case." He goes, "I got to make a phone call down there. You're not the traditional person they go after." So at that point now, it's like all these things are stacking up where I'm like, you know what? That's the right place for me. And there was a
Mm-hmm.
relationship I developed with Coach Slesh, with Coach Perella, and with Coach Debs that I was like, this is where I want to be for the next 4 years and beyond. I go to Case for 4 years. I bounce around. I'm a finance accounting guy, and I don't like my internship. I'm going to go to law school. I'm watching a bunch of Law and Order. I'm getting ready to take the LSAT. I'm trying to figure out, like, what am I doing? At the end of the day, like, all I want to do is play more football and coach. And I remember I hit this moment my junior year at Case where I'm sitting there and I went into Coach Debs' office, and I'll call him Debs in this because that's what we call him. But I walk into Debs' office and he goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "Debs, I don't know what to do the rest of my life." He goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm going to graduate from here in a year and a half." And like, he's like thinking to himself, he's like, "This isn't usually an issue with our guys. They have internships. They know what they want to do. Like, I've done the internships. I just don't want to do this. The only thing I look forward to on this campus is coming to your guys' office, is watching film with you." When I had work study, he used to let me call community college coaches on the West Coast and try to find if there's anybody with a 3.5 or better that we can at least start a conversation with. So it's kind of my early, initiation into recruiting and like all these other things. And kind of, he never says this full out, but like, I think he was utilizing me because he knew that this is what I wanted to do for a living. And it was such a blessing in disguise. I remember sitting in his office and I was just really emotional because I didn't want to say goodbye to football. And when that final day came and I was done playing, at this point, I'm like, I'm just going to be a graduate assistant and see if I can, and it's really like not taking the 4 years of schooling from Case and just throwing it down the drain, but it was not necessarily the upbringing that I needed in the profession, but it taught me a different way to look at the game, a different way to prepare, and so on and so forth. So I get a GA job at John Carroll University,
Now let me
and
ask you
it's
about that. Before we get into
yeah.
that, so was there not an opportunity at Case, or did Coach Deb give you the advice to maybe separate yourself from the guys that you had just played with?
So he had offered me a job to coach. So this is kind of a fun story. Jerry Shaplinski was our special teams coordinator. Coach Shaplinski gets offered a job to be he's going to go. Where did he go? He left. Sorry, check that back. Tom Kaufman. Jerry Shaplinski comes in. Tom Kaufman, who ironically enough just replaced me at Gilmour Academy as the head football coach, was our special teams coordinator when I played there.
Okay.
Coach Kaufman leaves to go to be the defensive coordinator at the University of Chicago. So the special teams job is open.
Mm-hmm.
Debs lets me interview for this job. I mean, I just got done playing. I'm 22 years old. I'm coming on the field. I was on the punt unit and the field goal unit. I didn't know the first thing about special teams, but he lets me interview for the job. Now, that being said, I think it was a gracious interview. I never was a candidate for it. Jerry Shaplinski, who we ended up hiring, who's now the tight ends coach for the Las Vegas Raiders. I think he's the tight ends coach for the Raiders right now. He's been in the NFL the last couple of years, and another great guy to know in the profession, and incredible human being. But Jerry ends up taking that job. Well, ironically enough, Jerry ends up recruiting Central Ohio like I do here at Carroll. Now, I say that because we didn't have graduate assistants at Case Western Reserve.
Okay.
John Carroll had traditional graduate assistants. So I could go get my master's, And then my thought process was, I'm going to go get my master's in counseling, school counseling. And if this doesn't work out as a college guy, like I'm going to high school.
Yeah.
Like my high school coaches, Art Bortnick, Joe Chavone, Pat Conahan, these guys walked on water. Like my high school coaches were like, I thought these dudes were like the Rolling Stones. Like it was like when they walked in the room, I was like, it's Mick Jagger. Like, oh my, like, these guys were like the coolest guys on the planet. And like every day I walked those halls and I looked at them and I go, they are living the life I want to live. They're helping kids every single day. They make a living. They got a roof over their head. They're like the coolest guys in this building, and they coach. And they're just like there's just something about it. Like they were the epitome of what masculinity was for me. And it wasn't like that macho masculinity. It was they showed you the whole person. And when I say that, it's like they showed you when they were vulnerable. They showed you when they were tough. They showed you everything in between. And I was like, I want to be like those cats. So I go to Carroll to get this GA job with the mindset I'm probably just going to return back to Benedictine, where I went to high school, and go coach there, and I'll be a lifer at Benedictine. Well, I go to interview for the GA job, and this is so crazy. I had already applied to the graduate school. I had already made my mind up. I'm going to go get the school counseling, and I probably was going to help coach at Case. Regis Scape, the head coach at Case, calls me, or at Carroll at the time, calls me probably 24, 48 hours after I applied. And he's this Italian guy. And he's like, hey, big boy, like, would you like to maybe come in for an interview? And I'm like, yeah, like that's like the greatest call ever. So I go in and I interview with Andy Hoffman and Ron Dolciato, who became lifelong friends, as well as Coach Scape. And they offer me this graduate assistant job. So I get this GA job, and I'm like, this is the greatest gig on the planet. Like in my mind, I'm like, there's not a better place in the world for me to be. And I go to Carroll. I'm a GA for 2 years. I'm there for 2 of the worst years in the program history. We're like 5-5 and 3-7. And the reason I tell you that part is that we had our 2 offensive full-time coaches. They leave at the end of the year.
Okay.
So the season's over. We're 3-7. They're like, this place is a sinking ship. We're out of here. Like, we're out. So they leave. We start bringing in people to interview for these jobs. Well, I didn't apply for the job. I'm a graduate assistant. Like, I don't have a shot. Coach Scape walks in. He goes, I need to see you. So I sit down in his office. He goes, why haven't you applied for this job? And I'm like, Coach, I'm a GA. He goes, you don't understand. Apply for the job. Almost like saying, like, I want to hire you. Like, apply for this job. So I go.
I can't do it without the app. I need the resume. Just submit a resume to my desk.
Yeah, like, please, I'm asking you. So, I apply for the job. We go through the interview process. I end up getting it. And now here's what's crazy. I'm a GA. We interviewed 4 offensive line coaches. I sat through 3 other offensive line coaches' interviews, and then I interview as the 4th guy. So it was like, for me, it was great. Those 3 other guys are probably like, man, this is terrible. So I sat there and I'm like, all right, this guy did this guy did, because you don't know how to interview. You've been a GA for 2 years. No one prepared you. I didn't, like, these guys come in with books, they come in with tape, and I'm sitting there like, I don't have any of this stuff. I'm like,
I gotta get it.
At night, I'm working on my book. I'm working on all this stuff, and like, I'm ready to go. So I interview. I'm lucky enough to get the job. And one of the cool things about Division III coaching, as you are well aware, it's not the most lucrative gig in the world. And I got quoted 2 different salaries. If we hired this other guy, Tom Arth, you would get paid this much. If we go hire the other guy, you'll make this much more money. So deep down in my head, I'm like, I really hope we don't hire this Tom Arth. I hope we don't hire this Tom Arth guy, because like I want the more money. Like it was a difference of probably like $8,000. And I'm like, when you're making $5,000 a year, and then you start thinking to yourself, you put a number in front of it, you're like, man, I'm rolling in it. So so it changes quickly. We ended up hiring Tom Arth. I got the lower salary, but in the deep, long run of this thing, it was way better for me and way better for my family. And I found a place that I was able to get my master's still. I was able to get that school counseling background, which I think I still use to this day when I talk to families, when I talk to young men here. It's imperative you understand how people think. What are their learning styles? How can you interact with them? Like, and I think that, like, when I talk to young coaches and I say, what do you want to study? Like sports management, this is an unpopular take. Don't major in sports management. Don't major in sports management. Because all sports management is this. What did you do? Well, I took a watered down business curriculum and 1 psychology class. Like, awesome. Like, Like great. Like,
Doesn't help.
if you want to get in like, yeah, if you want to get into like ticket management and stuff like that, like maybe that's the route to go. But realistically, it's not. Like go get a business degree. Go get a
Yeah.
business degree if you want to know about. If you want to know about the person, go study sociology, go study psychology, go study a discipline that you can go use, and it's transitive on a lot of different levels. And I'm really blessed with that because I was able to do that on two different levels, at the undergraduate level and the graduate school level, which really just kind of opened my eyes to how to deal with a lot of different families of a lot of different walks of life. So I become a full-time coach at Carroll. At this point now, we start recruiting, like we're crushing in recruiting. We're bringing in 100 to 110 kids a year. We're starting to do it the way that you want to do it, usually in this conference. And I'm not saying that's exactly the model we're using here at Otterbein right now. We've been a little bit more selective because of the attrition that you have and things like that. And we can talk about that in a little bit. But we start recruiting and like you're just pounding the pavement, recruiting, and you're finding the right guys that kind of fit who John Carroll is at the time. Mm-hmm. And the roster explodes. We got 150 guys in the program. Now, there's a great thing about having 150 guys, and there's a negative of having 150 guys. The disadvantage is when you go camp season, every day you walk into your office at 5:30 in the morning, there's a couple kids sitting outside your office that midnight train to Georgia. It's not. We were doing that with those guys, and you get to have those interactions with them. Like, do you really love football? Are you really, really committed to having that opportunity to be a member of our program and what you truly love? So I go through that process. I spent 3 years. I'm sorry, check that. 3 years as the special. Let me make sure I have the title right. I was the special teams coordinator, the director of community outreach, the assistant director of recruiting. I was the operations guy. I did not drive the bus because I didn't pass my CDL test. I didn't try. I was kidding. I didn't have that. But I mean, you have all these different hats you wear as you go through it, and I did all those different things. I was a run game coordinator. I coached the offensive line, the tight ends. I had all the special teams. Well, I did that for 3 years. We go 6-4. And Coach Scaife ends up getting let go at 6-4. He gets let go at 6-4. It's a tough deal, right? You leave it at 6-4. I was recruiting at Padua High School. I'll never forget. I'm at Padua High School up in Parma, and I see my phone rings, and it's Coach Scaife. He calls again. He calls 3 times in a row. Like, I'm with a recruit, and I'm finally like, I got to take this thing. 1 second, excuse me. I walk away. I get the call. He goes, "You got to come back like now," and then say anything else. I just hung up. So I'm like, okay. So now, what am I thinking? We're 6-4. And I'm like, we were number 1 in the conference in special teams. We had the offensive line. We gave like 5 sacks last year. Like,
you're starting to
let go. Like,
yeah.
You start thinking like, and now that drive across Cleveland, you drive from Parma Heights. You drive from Parma to University Heights, which for those that don't know, it's probably a 25-minute drive, depending on the day. Whenever you can hop on a 480 and work your way over.
Long 25 minutes.
On traffic on the center. That's the longest 25 minutes of my life. I'm driving. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, God bless America. Like, what is this? I call my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. I call her and I said, hey, and she was living in Columbus. So I said, hey, I don't know if I'm going to make it to Columbus tonight because I was planning on hitting the Parma schools and I was supposed to go to a Columbus fair that night. Mm-hmm. And she goes, what's wrong? And I'm like, I think I'm getting let go. She said, we can still come to Columbus. You don't have a job then. She tried to make it like funny of it. I'm like, let's take a step back. Come down to the stadium. Coach Scaife sitting there, Brian Cochran, who's at Western Carolina right now as the defensive line coach, and Tom Arth, who's the passing game specialist for the Chargers now. We're the 3 full-time guys at the time. We sit down in his office. He goes, close the door. So I close the door. At this point now, when I see the other 3 coaches are there, it settles in that it's not me. Now it's us, but it's not me directly.
Yeah.
So I end up sitting there. He tells us he got to let him go. And I go, what? And he goes, well, they told me I had to win 7 games. I only won 6. And that was how it ended for him. So then the process starts. AD has us come over. We talk to the AD, Lori Massa, who to this day, she was awesome. Great person. I've always loved Lori. Lori asked me, she goes, do you want to interview for the job? Job. I'm 20, whatever. There's a million people around the country who want this job. It's a really good job. Like, I'm not ready at this point in my life to be the head football coach there. I just know that. I go, I don't. I go, but there are guys on staff I think that would be great candidates for it. And I say that because at the time, Tom Martha's a passing game coordinator. He's done a great job. He's got leadership oozing out of him. Rondo Ciato, who goes on to become the head coach at St. Vincent eventually, he's our offensive coordinator. Brian Cochran had been the head coach at Heidelberg prior to that. So there's all these guys that are on staff that have this experience. And then there's me, and I'm like, there's no way. So I said, well, you know who you need to interview. So she goes through the process. I don't think Cochran went into the process. I don't know, I think Dulce and Tom went into the process. Well, Tom ends up getting the job. Fast forward, and then we just hit the ground running. And we hit, we hit on a couple recruits, we hit on a couple transfers. Everything kind of rolls in. We're the number one offense in Division III athletics. We get this thing humming, and we're rolling through. We go play the guys in Alliance. We lose on the last play of the game. We're going to the last play of the game. We're in a 2-minute situation. We had a signal that was called Rocket. So it was basically a Y cross type of play. We're at the 8-yard line. We had this kid, Brendan Carazoni, and Zach Strippy were the two tight ends we had. They were both all conference tight ends. We had the first team and second team all conference tight ends. Not a bad situation to be in.
No.
No. I mean, you're like sitting there, you go like we had 20 kids that were like all conference that year. It was awesome. But anyways, we call the Rocket play, and I think it would end up going to Carazoni because we were in 12. He was at the Y. The H was because he was at the Y and Strip was at the H. But anyways, we hit this cross. Well, our quarterback sees a signal. He sees this. He thought to spike it. There's 3 seconds left in the game at this point. We get a first down. He goes and he spikes the ball. Now, here's the thing that's crazy about this story. The home clock operator at Mount Union must be the most honest human being on the planet.
Why?
He stops the clock at 1 second. So this guy stops the clock at 1 second. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second. I take my headset off. I go, the game's over. I know the rule. I start taking my headset off. And then the officials set the ball. So now I put my headset back on. We come back. We're like, hey, let's run it. We get ready to run it. And Coach Karras, the legend that he is, he's the AD at the time. He walks onto the field and was, wait a second, this is wrong. And he was right.
Yeah.
He was right. The guys that played for me, they don't want to hear this to this day. They still are mad at me because they were like, how did you handle it like that? I go,
because he was
we
right.
were wrong. Like it was the right thing to have happen. So we end up, they come out, they talk for probably 10 minutes. The officials had no clue on the rule. I know they had no clue on the rule. See the football go up in the air. Our kids fall to the ground, tears. We jump in the playoffs. We go to the we go to the Elite Eight. We lose to Mount again by a touchdown at Mount. So it's like Groundhog Day. And I remember just like being empty. I was like, man, this is so hard. Because I wanted like I knew I was going to have another zit their entire life to get to the point where they could be the greatest team in John Carroll history. Through that process, like I said, we had 1 million guys. Our offense is number 1 in the country. I'm a finalist for the Football Scoop Coordinator of the Year award. This is how I end up getting to the Division I level. This is crazy. I'm sitting at my desk at John Carroll. I get a call from a Tennessee Knoxville extension, and it's this raspy voice. Is this Tommy Zagorski? Yes, it is. Hi, this is Butch Jones with Tennessee. So in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, like, this is somebody's messing with me. Someone's pranking me, whatever it may be. I'd love to have you come down. Now, fast forward, one of my college teammates is a QC there for special teams. Mark Elder, who's a special teams coordinator at the time. Mark is a case guy, but is like older than me. We never played together, but he knew me through the kind of the pipeline of Case Western Reserve guys. So I go down to Tennessee, fly down. It's an interview. I didn't think it was. I thought it was just talking offense. I sit there with Mike DeBoard. It was May 21st. I still remember this because it was my mother's birthday, and Nick Sheridan, who's a tight ends coach at Washington right now. Nick's been a coordinator in Indiana. A couple of other. Nick's one of the best minds of this game. It was Nick's birthday and my mother's birthday. So I remember this because I was laughing. I go, you guys are wasting your time on an interview with me on your birthday, Nick. Like, you should be spending it with your wife and enjoying life. So it was his fiance at the time, but Mike DeBoard, who won a national title at Michigan as the offensive coordinator under Lloyd Carr, incredible, brilliant mind. He puts me on the board, and I'm thinking I'm going to be talking about offensive line play. First play. What's your favorite 3rd and 7 to 10 call? I'm thinking to myself like that. I'm anticipating to come in to talk about offensive line and run game and protections. So I take a deep breath and I'm like, ooh, I did not think that he was going to do this. And I joked. I said, what do we do on 1st and 2nd down, coach? Just to kind of buy some time, because I just wasn't, you're mentally not there. Like you're mentally, like you lock into one thing part of a game. You're like, this is what's going to happen. And now you got to adjust. So I go through, I install a couple different passing concepts that we went through. And he stops me midway through the 3rd passing concept. And he goes, all right, you know football. You're good. And at that point, I'm like, all right, like I blew it. Butch walks in. What's your favorite run? So we start drawing up. I draw up counter. So I draw up counter. Little did I know, Mike DeBoard's favorite run is counter. So he's sitting there at the table. He's shaking underneath it. Probably a little bit of stuff I'm teaching. He's probably like, oh, there's no way you'd run that. Because when you love a play, you watch somebody else install it, you're like kind of like, wait a second, like this is the same way I make my buffalo chicken dip. So don't tell me how to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm up there and I'm throwing stuff up there on the board and I'm going through it. Butch walks in. Butch sits down, doesn't introduce himself. It's the first time I get to like meet him in person. Butch sits there, he puts his hands up, rocks back and forth in his chair. He's watching me. You know, I'm thinking to myself, Elvis is in the room, you know, the head coach of an SEC team. 6, maybe 7 minutes I'm presenting, gets up and walks out. Now, mind you, at that point, I don't see the guy the rest of the day. I'm going through all these different things, talking about recruiting, I'm breaking down film, a million things that they have you do when you go for these interviews. The day ends, 3:00. I'm supposed to meet with Coach Jones. I walk in, I sit down with him. He sits back and he goes, what'd you think? It was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I learned from your guys. It was great. A great experience. I appreciate you having me today. He goes, I'm going to offer you the assistant offensive line job at Tennessee. And I'm kind of like floored. I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, no, I'm offering you the assistant line job at Tennessee. And I'm like, wait a second. Coach, no disrespect. You were in there for 6 minutes. He goes, I have eyes and ears everywhere in this building. I watched you all day and you don't even know it. So little I know, I start working at Tennessee. There's cameras in every corner of the facility. This guy had the whole place was bugged. Like no matter where you walk, there was somebody watching you, interacting, they could hear you. So he was watching me all day without him actually sitting there. And it was great. So I get back to Knoxville, or get back from Knoxville to Cleveland. Talked to my fiance at the time, my now wife. I talked to Tom, and June 1st, I drive down to Tennessee. And I start, beginning of June. So I walk in, first guy I meet, a kid named Jalen Hurd, running back who's 6'5", 250 pounds. Because I'm Jalen Hurd. And I go, the heck you are, man. I'm looking at this kid. I go, running backs don't look like this guy. And like, he's our running back. And then behind him's this kid named Alvin Kamara, who just moved in from Hutch Community College. Turns out to be a pretty good player.
He's
Josh
pretty good.
Dobbs,
Pretty
good.
And a rocket scientist.
And a rocket scientist. So I'm going through this and I'm looking and I realize like I am surrounded by these freakazoid players. It's one of the best situations I could possibly be in. So I'm there for the season. Mm-hmm. We start off the season, we're 2-2. We lose to Oklahoma in double overtime on ABC, Baker Mayfield. We're up 17-3 in the fourth quarter. They come back, a couple PI calls. They tied up 17-17. We lose. We lose at Florida on the last play of the game. We lose to Alabama by 3. So they kind of show you where we were at Tennessee-wise. I mean, we're knocking on the door. We beat Georgia at home. We go take care of Missouri. Missouri was like legit defensively that year. Vanderbilt was the number 1 rushing defense in the country. We rushed for 350 on them. I mean, like, we rolled this thing into Outback Bowl on New Year's Day. We beat the tar out of Northwestern. And our Mark Elder, the guy I mentioned before, Mark gets the head coaching job at Eastern Kentucky University. For me, EKU, all I knew about EKU was it was the place I usually stopped to get gas off of 75 when I was driving from Knoxville back to And little did I know, it was this incredibly tradition-rich program. Mark comes to me and says, "Do you want to come work here?" And I said, Mark, I'm at Tennessee. Like, I don't know. He goes, "Here's what I'm going to pay you." And at this point now, mind you, I'm a Roman Catholic. I'm Catholic. Like, going to mass on Sundays is non-negotiable. When I was at Tennessee, it was the only time in my life I missed mass on Sundays because of the way our meetings were set up and things like that. So I asked him, I go, simple question. I go, "Mark, I'll come to Eastern Kentucky under two stipulations." He goes, "Go ahead." I go, "One, I can go to mass on Sunday." He goes, "Oh, it's easy. I can make that happen." I go, "Two, you go with me." And at that moment, I knew he like smiled and he's like, "I hired the right guy." So I take this job in Eastern Kentucky. Now I did that because now I'm on the field, I'm recruiting, I've got all these other opportunities. Plus, at the time, my dad's sick. So now I'm a little bit closer to home. I'm gonna drive away. Um, and ironically enough, my first month and a half on the job, my dad passes away. So I'm sitting there at my desk, I'm making recruiting calls, and I keep getting calls from my mom and my sister's like, "Hey, can you call us back? Can you call us back?" And you get into that where you're like a robo dialer. You start calling and recruiting. And next thing I know, I get the call that, "Can you come home?" He was sick. He ended up passing away on my drive back. But I say that because I God puts you in different places for a different reason. And he put me in Eastern Kentucky because he challenged me on a lot of different levels. And I go there as the tight ends coach. I go as the tight ends coach. I walked out the door as the assistant head coach, the offensive coordinator. I think about like the amount of growth I experienced in my 3 years in Richmond were incredible. The year before we got there, they were 3-8. I leave. I think we were 7 or 8 wins that last year. We were 8 wins that last year. We missed the playoffs by like a team when they do the seeding. And our offense was top 25 in the country. So at that point now, I'm like, this is it. This is like, I've come around circle. Like, I've earned it. I've earned what I've earned. And this is where I'm going to be. And at that point now, you get an agent. You start feeling yourself a little bit. You're like, all right, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm here. Maybe I'm here. This guy's calling. This guy's calling. And it's like, I got into this thing to coach high school football. I got into this whole deal because I thought Art Bortnick, I thought Pat Conahan, I thought Joe Chavone, like I said at the beginning. Like, I thought those dudes were the Rolling Stones, and I wanted to be like them. And fast forward, I end up, I'm the OC. We finished the season on a 4-game winning streak. It kind of saves everybody's jobs in the facility because we were kind of in limbo there that last year. And then Tom calls me, Arth from Chattanooga, and goes, "I want to bring you as the OC and the O-line coach. Well, I'm going to pay you this much." And I'm like, "Well, what's the pricing? Pay increase." I know Tom. Tom and I are friends. This makes sense. And I went to Mark, and Mark's a great friend. I still talk to Mark. I talk to Mark a ton still. Mark Elder. And I go in, I go, "Mark, here's the deal." And he's like, "I can't match that." I said, "I got to go then." I go, I'm getting married. I've got a, young bride on the way. I'm going to have kids soon. Like, it's all stuff I got to worry about. I go to Chattanooga for a whopping 2 weeks. So 2 weeks, I'm recruiting. I'm in Mississippi. I'm hitting houses in Tennessee. I'm in North Carolina. I'm all over the place. Well, and this is going on. The day I get the job, Tom gets a call from Akron about being the head coach at Akron. So now I'm like, he calls me. He goes, "What do you think of Akron?" And I said, "What about it?" He's like, "They called." And I said, "Go interview. See what I go, that's home for us. Northeast Ohio is where you and I are from. Like, I'm pretty sure we could kill in recruiting and everything else." And we go there, and he ends up getting the job. So 2 weeks later, I go from recruiting at Chattanooga, and I'll never forget this. I walked into a high school in Eastern Tennessee, and the coach made fun of me because I had come in there for Eastern Kentucky originally the week before. Then I was at Chattanooga. Then 2 weeks later, I'm at Akron. He started laughing. He goes, "What logo are you wearing next, man?" He goes, I didn't even know they made clothes that big for guys like you." He started making fun of me. So that was kind of funny. But, anyways, I go through the process, and excuse me, we end up at Akron. So we go to Akron. We start recruit a lot of local kids. We go through the first year. The programs, we have half the amount of scholarships you need. At that time, there's still a limit on 25. Not making excuses. There was a lot of things we had to take care of. Yeah. We go through this season where we go 0-12. You talk about a humbling experience. And it wasn't an 0-12 where it was like 0-12, like we were here in this game or we were in this game. 0-12, like if one of our buses didn't show up, it probably wouldn't have been any different in the game. Like the way these scores were going. We were we were overmatched and outclassed in a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then this pandemic hits.
Yeah.
So now this thing called we get the culture is like flipping for us. We feel our kids are doing great. All of a sudden, the guy that plays for the Jazz starts breathing on everybody. They cancel an NBA game,
and it's over.
Life is going to change drastically. So this pandemic hits. Now I'm sitting at a desk on Zoom like we are right now, spending 8-9 hours a day trying to make life as natural and normal for kids as possible, which it just wasn't.
Mm-mm.
And we're staffing, we're trying to do these things. Kids are dealing with mental health issues that you can't help. I mean, you can't even go you know this. We all lived through it. You couldn't go do anything for anybody.
Yeah.
And now you're sitting there and all you're depending on is prayer and an internet connection to try to make sure life is going to be somewhat stable for these guys. And it set everybody back. It didn't just set us back. But when you're in a fragile place where you're trying to flip a culture and try to change things, now they don't get to see you in person every day. I mean, I always joke, I said the secret sauce is being able to interact one-on-one with us, being in person with us, because you feel that energy. It's hard through these computer screens to read people, and you're talking to a room full of 60 guys every day, talking about here's how we run this or here's how we run that. It makes it kind of difficult. So I say all that. I think it put us in an interesting situation. We go through the pandemic season. We get told, now the MAC, if you remember, we're the first conference in Division I football that cancels football. So we have this meeting with our kids. We talk about how important it is health-wise, that you guys can't play. We're worried about you. We want to help you, yada, yada. Kids go, okay. 2 months later, we go, ESPN came in with millions of dollars. And now for some reason, your health, we still care about you, but we can make it work now that we have the solutions for this. So, and no one was upset we were playing, but it was just ironic the way that the narrative was, you can't play this game because there's no way to do it. Down in the FCC, then they're like, wait a second, like, Tuesdays and Wednesday nights, there's really nothing on TV to watch.
We could make some money here.
We'll play 6 games. They could do betting lines. It'll be great for everybody. So, needless to say, we played on national TV for 6 weeks. And it was, for us, the season was awesome, in the sense that we grew so much as we were going forward. Well, the end, we come out of the pandemic. The athletic director that we worked for gets let go. They bring in a new athletic director to revamp everything. And we were the next thing on the chopping block. So I end up going into the 2021 season, midway through camp. I'm miserable. My wife, I don't see my daughter that we just had. She has no idea who I am when I come home. I'm at a loss for words. We're not functioning. We're just not doing things right. I take a step away from it. I walk away from all I've done my entire life.
Wow.
I walk away from this 6-figure job. I'm the coordinator, all this stuff. I walk away and I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, what on God's green earth am I going to do to make a living? My buddy that's at an SEC school calls me and goes, hey, you want to be an analyst? I said, can I do it remotely? He said, I think so. I get on the phone. The gentleman I talked to goes, you can't do it remotely. We need you down here right now to do this. So I decide, you could probably figure out who that was, but I decide that it's probably not best to do that. So I go, I'll just sit out this cycle. And then what I'll do is I'll do something else for my family. So I get a job. Working human capital management, a whole lot, HR solutions and payroll. They're up in Cleveland, Ohio. They're the longest family-run payroll company in the United States. It started with a computer programmer who started making payrolls on computers that nobody ever did. I say this because it was just cool because I got thrown into a world that I didn't know anything about. But here's what I did. I had character because I was who I was all the time. I had humility because I knew how to serve others, which I talk about with our kids all the time. And I loved my family. And I tell this to our players all the time that when you go in the good book and you hear about love is patient, love is kind, love is all this. We know all that part. But at the bottom of it, it says it bears all. And I tell our kids that if it bears all, no matter what the situation is, you can make it through this. So I start working there. And I'll tell you what, I loved what I did. I loved the people I interacted with. But at the end of the day, boy, did I miss coaching football. I wouldn't tell my wife. I wouldn't tell my daughter. I would just, every night when I would drive back and forth to the office or to a next sale, I was like, man, I would drive by high schools, and it was just like, oh, I remember going in there and recruiting. Oh, there's a football field. Like, so this is when I knew the moment was I had to change what I was doing. So we're living in the Akron area. There's a group of little kids playing football in a park.
Mhm.
Bunch of kids in the city of Akron. There's like 6 of them. They're throwing a football around. Well, me being the creeper, this chubby white guy pulls up in a car and just says, watching them. And they kind of like look over at me, and they're like, I get out of the car. Now I think to myself, like, why would these kids even want to listen to me? They're probably like, who is this? Who's this chubby white dude in a sport coat that's walking in? Like, man, this guy's gonna try to take us or something. Like, they're not gonna trust me. Well, I get out there and I'm watching the one kid throw the ball, and I'm like, kind of, you ever try doing this? The one kid's trying to snap. So I'm teaching him how to snap, and like, all right, here's a route, and I'm teaching him how to run smash. Like, simple stuff that these kids are like 7 years old. They're probably in their head, they're like, man, who is this guy? So then I come home, my wife goes, why are you late? And I go, I was playing with these little kids. And she's like, what? What are you talking about? Like, who did I marry? So I tell her the story, and then that kind of opens the door where it's like this point where I'm like, she's like, you got to get back into it some way.
Mm.
I'm at mass every Sunday, and I'm staring at the cross, and the homily that week was about being true to yourself. Being true to yourself. And I'm like, I'm not true to myself. This isn't what God didn't put me on the planet to do this.
Yeah.
So once again, you talk about funny things happening. I get a phone call from the athletic director at Gilmour Academy, which is a private Catholic school in Northeast Ohio, about 175 boys in the school. And they just got rid of their football coach. They just fired in March. So this is the beginning of April. Would you have any interest in being our head football coach? So in the back of my mind, I'm like, I kind of got the sales thing figured out. I could do the sales job. I could coach high school football, like make decent money, coach football, like win-win, right? Go to my wife. She says, do it. You love it. This is who you are. Absolutely. I go in, and I'm blown away by Gilmour Academy. Gilmour not only says, hey, we want you to be the head football coach. We want you to use your school counselor background and do this, this, and this in the school. Awesome. Like, this is great. So I take the job, and we have our son. Our son's born like the first week I'm there. So I get the job in May. A week later, my son's born. Kids get out for school. We run the whole summer program. Now, here's what's cool about high school football in the state of Ohio is that you can't legally do real football stuff. You can now. They give you 10 days. But before, you couldn't do like real 7-on-7 and stuff like that. But you got to do a lot of individual skill work without a football. And you talk about learning fundamentals and technique and teaching and what we got into this profession for. So I get to do this all summer with these kids. I make this incredible schedule where the kids have time off to do baseball, all this other stuff. It was great. I mean, it was football in the pure sense, like getting down in the stands and teaching a guy that. Teaching a guy, it was back to those little kids I was teaching, same stuff. We were blessed with a really good roster. We go 9-1. We go 9-1 in the regular season. We get into the playoffs. We jump out 21-0 on this team. And in the second half, they're a wing tee team, and we had them stop. We take them out of their wing tee. They hit us on 4 fourth-down plays, throwing like Hail Mary balls up that like you couldn't make this up. Like the ball's like spinning this way and it's coming down. We end up losing 49-48. And I think to myself, I'm just like, man, what a run for those kids. So in my mind, this is where I'm going to be the next, I'm going to have my kids go to school there. This is where we're going to be forever. And then I get a call from 2 local high school coaches in Columbus. They're like, hey, we're on the committee at Otterbein. You should go apply for the job. So I'm like, all right. So they send me a link. They send me the general link for this job. Not like some special link, when you get a job, it's usually already decided. I literally get this general link. It's the day after Christmas. It's December 26th. I sit down, I go through the whole thing. I write the whole essay out. And as I'm doing it, I start research. And I say essay because the school has to write an essay about your commitment to diversity and your commitment to the university. And I'm like, this is so cool. So I'm going through it. And Otterbein, on the other side of this, I always watched us. And I always thought to myself, like, that place location-wise is incredible. We got 75 different majors. I mean, we've got a lot of things that a lot of other people would kill to have. Like, why can't we be better? And I applied for the job. Lo and behold, I find out those two knuckleheads that told me that they were on the committee, they had nothing to do with the search process. They just thought it'd be funny to get me to interview for the job. And I go through the process and I take over February 7th here. So now you're looking at almost 75 days, I think, into my tenure here as the head football coach at Otterbein. And it's been incredible. My wife and kids, my wife grew up 10 minutes from campus.
Mm-hmm.
My in-laws live right here in Columbus. I've got family here in Columbus on both sides of my family. My wife's got family here. It's such a great fit for us. And it's such a great fit because I look at this school, I look at the sleeping giant that we are and what we can do going forward. And I just think about, like, what's the next step for Otterbein? And I say this because I know you haven't got to ask a lot of questions because I've just been rolling with this thing. But I ask our kid, whenever you take over a program, I've always noticed whenever you jump into a program, kids can ask you two different things. They can ask you the question why, or they can ask you the question how and when. And I can, without a doubt, say, here standing here, May 1st, 2023, our kids have asked the question how and when all the time. They have not asked why. They have bought in. They have bought into our culture. They've bought into our, and I say culture a lot. Culture I learned in 5th grade at St. Dominic's. I had a history teacher that said culture is a way of life. I'll never forget that as long as I live. Mr. Thompson, God rest his soul, Mr. Al Thompson wrote it as a way of life up on the board. And that definition has stayed with me my entire life. And this way of life that our kids are living right now, it's been awesome. We flip practices to the mornings. We do lifting in the morning. Everything's morning based here because now with the academics that we have on the tail end of it, we can have everybody there in the morning.
Yeah.
There's no scheduling conflicts. There's no class issues. There's no issues for our guys. There's no excuses. They're not oversleeping class. They're not missing us.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is they jump in and we're here ready to roll. So it's been a lot of fun. Our kids are buying in and I'm really excited about where we're going this fall.
So let's unpack a little bit now that we're
right.
Caught up to where
you should have stopped me.
No, you got
should have stopped me.
You got through the story. Every question I was going to ask, you answered. So most of the people that watch this, they know the questions. They don't watch for me. They're watching for you. So first, what are you looking for in a young man, in an 18-year-old football player?
So what I'm looking for is, I call it the three-rounded. Three-rounded is a guy that plays 3 sports. So a lot of different athletics. They're involved in a lot of different things. 3.0 or better GPA-wise. That means that and I say 3.0 because Mom, Dad, and God didn't give everybody the ability to be a 4.0 student. Mm-hmm. But they did give everyone the ability to take notes. And at the high school level, I feel like the cost of attendance is somewhere in that 3.0 realm, depending on where you go to school at. Now, maybe you're a 2.7 at this place or you're a 3.3 at this place as we go into it. And I think the third thing that we look for is those 3 pillars I talked about. Does he show flashes of character? Does he show flashes of humility? Does he show flashes of love? And I say that because we can build that. I really feel we can build that when they're here. But I also, when I walk into a high school and the girl that meets me at the office that's taking me back to, Coach Rigatoni's office or Coach Tamale's office, like she's gonna go take us out to these guys' offices. But when I'm walking in that office, I ask that girl, hey, what do you know about Darnell Smith? What do you know about, what do you know about Jimmy Johnson? What do you know about these guys? And it's amazing how much they can tell you about those guys. Instead of that, they'll say, oh, I love him. He's the best. And it's like, then she turns red and you're like, all right, maybe it's not the right guy, whatever it may be. You kind of find out what they are. And it's amazing as you're walking the halls, you run into an officer, you run into a janitor, you run into, and this also, everyone says this is cliche. It takes me an hour and a half to walk the halls of a high school because I'm going to ask every person there because I want to make sure I do the background work to find out who this kid is. Because I've seen it on Huddle. He's a great player. The transcript looks all right. The coach isn't going to tell me he's just okay. These coaches' jobs are to promote their kids.
Yeah.
And they live in a social media world. It's the same way, like on social media, I'm never like, man, here's a picture of what I had for dinner last night. It was 2 stars at best. Like, no, it's like every meal's a banquet. Like, you got to make it look greater than it really is. So I say that because it's important that we do that homework. And I tell our coaches that as well when they're on the road. Ask those same questions because I look at, like, over the years I've been recruiting, it doesn't matter what level you're recruiting at. You're looking for the same traits.
Yeah.
You're looking for the same traits. Now, the difference is probably when I walk into a high school down the street, 6'6", and he can bend and he can do all this other stuff. And I'm like, hey, man, good luck. Like, it's just
Good luck
you're
coming
here. Right. But you're 6'3" and you're a $195 and your mom's got thick ankles. We might have a shot. So, like, there's different things you look at when you're trying to piece those things together to make it work. So I think when you look at that from there, that's what we're looking for to make sure those guys fit. And then also in the conversations we have with these guys, are they genuine conversations? Can you actually talk to these guys? Is it, and that drives me crazy is like, well, we'll sit in a recruiting meeting and they're like, well, this kid, Jimmy's been great with me on the phone. I go, guys, I've called Jimmy 6 times. He's never answered. He's never called me back, even after a text. How genuinely interested is he in us? As we have, yeah. Maybe I'm getting older. I'm not single anymore, so I'm not chasing as much as I used to. There were times where I would send that text, make the call. Now I'm at the point where I'm like, let's find a mutual interest, because what happens is you fall in love with the wrong player, and at the end of it, you never have a shot at the guy. Mm-hmm. You never have a shot at that recruit. And you, in your mind, you may think there's a chance there. Now, if you break through, you have that moment where you continue to work through it, and then it happens, that's great. But if you have to fight that hard to recruit a kid to come to your school out of the gate, in the world we live in today, they're leaving. They're the first sign of adversity, they're leaving, because we all do this. When something goes wrong, where do we go? Something goes wrong, where do you go?
Back to comfort.
This office, that office. Comfort. You want to find the right answer. And the right answer is not always the right answer. It's the answer you want. And when you want that answer, it's so easy nowadays to go jump in a portal, to go do this, to go do that. So you jump in, and like it's so hard. Then you're sitting there, and I joke about this the other day. I told our athletic trainers, I go, it's funny. We spend 98% of our time on 2% of our roster. We spend 2% of our time on the other 98% of our roster. And what I mean by that is not that we don't give each kid the same amount of love, but there's certain guys that you just have to do certain guys you're chasing as you go through it. When you figure that out, when you get to a point where it's not that point, where literally you're giving everybody the same amount of time. And I get this. Life happens.
Yeah.
Their life happens, and that guy walks through my door right now. I want to be here for him. And I want him to trust me. I want him to talk to me. I want him to have the ability. Or I want him to have somebody on our staff that he feels that relationship is with, that he can go to. But also, it's important that we make sure these kids understand that we're here for them as more than just football coaches. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing you find. And when you find the kids that fall in love with Otterbein, they fall in love with our process, the way we do things, and they genuinely care about one another, like that's when you've hit it. That's when you hit it out of the park. And right now, recruiting wise, we're still active in it. Next year at this time, if you call me, if I'm still this active on 23s, I'm going to be really disappointed in my process leading up to it with the 24s. But like I said, the time window that we came into this thing, but we're putting together a class that we're really proud of.
Now, you've gone to a couple different divisions. So what is the significance and importance of Division III? I mean, it's obviously no scholarships, but what's the importance of some of these high school athletes still having a place to call home?
I think as you look at Division III, every guy's Division III story is different. I started this with you. I was a good football player in high school. I was all state and half of Michigan, man. I had the whole thing going. I was going to knock you out of the park. I could bench a house. I could run this. I could do that. But at the end of the day, like I said, I was 5'10". I was 5'10" with certain arms and certain things. There was nothing I could have done differently in my preparation to get ready for college that would have elevated my game to a different level. Yeah. I took what mom, dad, and God gave me, and I maximized it. And I think when you watch across this conference, and Division III, there were guys in locker rooms with you that maybe hit a growth spurt late, maybe found the sport late. Like we got a kid, I think about the kids that are in our program that, some of these guys that we have in our program only played 1 year of high school football in our recruiting class, like right now, that they found the sport late. Division I, they don't have time for those guys unless they're genetically just absolute freakazoids that they're going to go take. I think Division III represents the ability, and it's not just for everybody. It represents the ability of people that still have the discipline, that still have the desire to compete every single day and enrich their college experience in ways others will never dream it. And when you do that, you play at this level, you do it because you love it. And the
Yeah.
brotherhood that you're going to foster with guys from all different walks of life there's nothing else like it. There's nothing else like it. My guys don't walk in the locker room. They're not checking each other's shoes out to go, oh, what NLI deal do you have? Hey, I got to run out of here. The sandwich guy down the street wants me to stand outside and sign autographs for 2 hours so I can get $500. Like, our guys aren't doing that.
Mm-hmm.
What they're doing is they're playing the sport because they love it. And they also know the fact that helmet and shoulder pads is just part of who they are. It's part of their process. And they're not ready to turn that thing in yet. And I think that looks back at like you being a Division III athlete, myself being a Division III athlete. It's why we played it.
Yeah.
We played it not because it was like, I'm going to get into the school because of it. I just knew that I needed it. You needed it. These guys need to have that ability to do it. And when these guys sit in my office and we do those end of semester meetings, that's what 95% of our players are talking about. They're talking about just how much fun they had. And I tell guys this all the time. Remember the first time you put a helmet and shoulder pads on. There's no other experience like it.
No.
Like, I think about this. My son's going to be 1 next month. Like, when little Bronco gets to put on his first helmet and his first shoulder pads, like, he better make sure he remembers that moment, because that moment, it changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
It changes the way you look at life. I mean, that is your armor. You put that thing on and you represent something bigger than yourself. And I think when you do that, there's no other team sport like it. There's no other sport where you have 10 other guys that depend on you and 11 other guys that depend on you that aren't even on the field with you at the same time. And there's guys on the sideline that depend on you, and they're going to run down on a team's unit, and they're going to go play this. And at the end of it, it's this beautiful symphony of all these human beings coming together to put together this incredible product that you'll never have the chance to do ever again in your life. Go play basketball at the Y. Go do breakfast or hoops. Go play softball. Go play tennis. Go do golf. You can do all that the rest of your life. You never get the chance to put that helmet, to put those shoulder pads on one more time and be part of the beauty of what this sport is. And when you see it through that lens and you look at it, and I've watched it for the last 17 years, and in my 17 years of coaching, 9 of my years have been at the Division III level. I've watched doctors, I've watched lawyers, I've watched businessmen, I've watched other coaches, I've watched police officers, I've watched helicopter pilots, I've watched guys of all different walks of life go accomplish amazing things, all because they got to play Division III football. I watched, when the Hamlin guy in Buffalo went down, one of my former players at John Carroll was performing CPR on him on that field. He was an academic All-American for us. And I thought to myself, it's probably, if not the proudest moment, one of the proudest moments of my coaching career, because that guy knew when he was done, he loved playing football. He loved it. He loved every aspect of it. Mm-hmm. But he knew the disciplines that he learned while playing football were going to allow him to be a physical therapist, to allow him to become that doctor he was going to be. And it changed his life, and he helped save another person's life. Not to mention all the amount of other guys that have saved others' lives, literally and figuratively, from playing this sport. So sorry for that long-winded response, but you look at this and I say it's like, I say it's a symphony because it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. And the fans that watch it sometimes may not see it the same way we see it, but you see that moment, right? You see that moment where it happens. And it was funny. I laughed. I go, how much I love sports is, and I don't know who watches Ted Lasso or whatever. My wife and I, we give ourselves an hour a week. We watch this Ted Lasso show. So no spoiler alert if you watched it last week. They install this new offense, and they look terrible. They look terrible doing it. And it finally goes to click for them. And they're doing it. They're passing, and they pass it over here. They pass it over here. It's back the boy. It's gone. They go crazy. And I got a rush for it. And it was because I knew what they put into it. And when it clicks for a team, you see that moment, you get those chills. You get that moment where you just go, oh, this is why we get into what we do. This is why we compete that way. So, yeah, really important.
Now, this will be the second to last question leading up to, actually, there's 2 more after this. This question is more for your.
Yeah, I'll be on a time limit, I promise.
Your alumni and the fan base. What is the message to the fan base going into 2023?
Yeah, the message to our fan base is very simple. Come out and see us because we're going to look a lot different. We're going to look a lot different in the way that we proceed.
Mm-hmm.
And I've told our fans this. I've told everybody this. I've told in every interview I've done. I'm not going to know if we're successful next year. If we go out and we go win the OAC, God bless us. That's awesome. If we do that, phenomenal. Everyone will look at it and go, wow, you're so successful. I'm going to know we're successful as a program 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. When I watch the lessons that we teach these young men every single day manifest into these incredible human beings that are great fathers, great husbands, great contributors to the fabric of our society, because that's what we need right now. Our society has never been challenged more to find true leaders, to identify people that take the lessons they learned on the football field, not of physicality, but of the psychology of being able to support others and be able to uplift others and be able to take the advantages and the talents of a wide receiver and an offensive lineman and how those work together. To take a defense, they'll be able to have the ability to have somebody that can communicate and dictate what we're going to do to be able to have the ability to do that. When you watch that happen, that's when we're a better society. That's when we help this country be the best version of itself. And I say that because if we're teaching those lessons the right way, the stuff that happens on the field will take care of itself. And I say that all the time because, and I told our alumni this the other day. I talked to our leather helmet club. It's a group of guys that some of them literally wore leather helmets. They're awesome. They're great guys. They come back here. They love it. They eat, sleep, and drink Otterbein football. And I told them the other day, I said, you know, that thing in the end zone, that scoreboard, first of all, I want some money, so we have a bigger one. No, I'm just kidding. But I told them, I said, that scoreboard can be a liar. And they look at me and they go, what do you mean? I go, there are days in your life where you do everything the right way. You prepare, everything leads up to it. You execute at a high level. But at the end of the game, it tells you lost.
Yeah.
Then there's other days where maybe you cut some corners through the week. You don't do everything the right way. But guess what? At the end of the day, they all say, hey, man, you won. You're a winner. But deep down inside, you know you're not. And I said, we got to figure out how to make sure that that doesn't dictate who we are. And I joked with them. I said, if that thing says we're a loser a lot, I'm a loser and I won't be around here very long. I know that. I go, but it's realistic that we got to make sure that we we find that medium between the two and give ourselves the ability to really grow and help men develop.
That's a pretty strong message coming in for the first year. I like that. What's the most important lesson you've learned throughout your career?
Never be too big for anyone or anything. I told our kids the first day I met them, leave every place this semester better than you found it. And I mean that in the sense that pick up little pieces of garbage, push a chair in, help somebody move something. Do those things not because you have to, but because you have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do that. You know, and I think about that all the time. I watch. We got an alum that he comes to the facility every morning, and he works out here, and he's fighting cancer right now. And he looks at me, and every day I go, "How are you?" He goes, "I'm upright and I'm here." He shoots 100 baskets a day in our gym. He was sitting on our bike the other day, and I look at him and I go, "You all right?" He goes, "I've logged 10,000 miles on this bike." And I'm thinking to myself, I go, well, so I go, where can we travel? So I show him my phone. I go, let's look. Where could we have been? This is so cool. And I'm sitting there with them, and I'm thinking to myself, like, the beauty of how he looks at life because of the scope that he has left in it on this time on this planet, like, is absolutely beautiful. And I tell our players this every day, like, you have to make sure you leave every place better than you found it. And if you can do that every single day, it's remarkable what we can do. And I say that and it makes sense. And you're like, oh, that sounds great. But literally, when I watch our kids walk on campus and I see them pick up a McFlurry cup or I see them pick up a wrapper that isn't theirs, like, it comes right back to the best thing I ever learned. Never be too big for whatever job it may be. Because why? Because life will humble you when you least expect it.
Very quickly.
You're a Division I coordinator. You think you got the whole world by a string, and you're sitting there in your office at the University of Akron, and you say, this isn't right. and I'm just not the right person for this right now at this moment. And you get up and you walk out and you go tell your wife you just quit the best paying job you've ever had in your life. And you're going to have to figure out another way to provide for your family. And at the end of the day, like, life will humble you when you least expect it. And I think when you look at that and you have the ability to serve, it gives you the ability to lift yourself up and lift others around you. So I think that's the biggest thing I've learned in this profession. And I look back at it and we talk about it all the time. We know all these guys that you saw in the NFL this past weekend, they've all got remarkable stories. You've got a remarkable story. We have families that have remarkable stories. We have my father-in-law came here as an immigrant with nothing, and he retired as the head of sales and common diesel engines in the state of Ohio. Like, you talk about great stories of people that just begins to scratch the surface of what we can do. But why? Because they were willing to serve others. When we're rooted in that humility, what's best for we, not always best for me, it's remarkable what we can accomplish.
I lost my train of thought for a second there. I was processing. You see, this ADHD thing, sometimes it kicks in and you don't know where to go. All right. So the final question that we ask on the show, it's the same way every week. And it's a little bit of a tongue twister. Was there a question that you were expecting me to ask you? And if so, how would you have answered it?
Whoa. All right. Talked about coaching influences. I didn't give you the ability to answer because I didn't breathe. I gave you an hour-long dissertation on who I am, and that doesn't sound very humble. It's just me telling you a story about who I am and all that stuff. Let me think. You know what? Probably to ask about my family. That would have been the one question I would have maybe just asking me who, how'd you meet your wife? Because I think that's one of the questions when I interview guys. The guy's married. How'd you meet your wife?
Mm-hmm.
And I learn a lot about guys when I hear them tell the story, how they met their wife, how they may have quote unquote recruited their wife, how they interact with their wife, and also how they respect their wife. Mm-hmm. Because I think in this profession, it's imperative that you're surrounded by great people. I've got an unbelievable wife right now who's probably during this sending me pictures of our babies and like letting me know everything's great. She's taking care of basically a move down here to Columbus and all the things she does that she puts on her back every single day that I take for granted so I can go chase the dream that I want. And I think about this. Matt Feeney, who's a real good friend of mine, a kid I recruited out of high school. He's a Columbus guy, Bishop Reedy. He works for the Raiders right now as a defensive quality control coach. He was the DC at Akron when I was there. So incredibly proud of Matt. But Matt's wife, Katie, was an All-American softball player. Mm-hmm. She started her coaching career as a softball coach. He started his career as a football coach. It got to a point where they had to decide when they had a family, one of them could continue to coach, the other one wouldn't. And I remember asking Matt one time, I said, how'd you guys make the decision? And he said, Tommy, every single day that I walk, he always called me Z. He called me Z. It was Z, every single day I walk in this facility, I realize I don't just represent myself. I represent her career as well. And I think about the sacrifices our significant others make. My wife makes friends everywhere she goes. She's a great person, but she's done this at multiple stops so that I can continue to coach and do what I love. Now, I pray to God, I really mean this, that I can be here 15, 25 years from now, where my kids can go here and we can grow up here and we can have a great life. Because I really feel this university affords that to us. But I really, as I look at it, I think that's the one question I would ask is kind of about that and your kids and, where you're at from there. But that would be the one thing usually most people, that I would ask. So
how did you meet your wife?
Oh, I don't know how much time we got. No. So all right, quick, I'll give you, I promise you, not to make a long story longer. My wife was it's ironic. We lose the state championship game in high school my senior year to Bishop Watterson in Columbus. My wife's a cheerleader for Bishop Watterson. I didn't know her then because she's up in Columbus. I'm in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. We go to Case Western Reserve. My wife's younger than I am. She walks into my house one day. We're having a late study session, if you will, for a group of a lot of students that may or may not have had adult beverages located. We were throwing a party. I'll be honest with you. We were throwing a party, right? So we're throwing a party. My house was a party house. They walk in, and this young, beautiful woman comes in. She's got on yellow Birkenstock. She got a little jean short on, a little white top. And I see her, and I'm like, oh, haven't seen this girl before. So I kind of walk over and, hey, how are you? Tommy Zagorski. I'm the captain of the football team. Where are you from? And she goes, I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I go, oh, really? Where'd you go to high school? She goes, Bishop Watterson. I go, get out of my house. I never want to see you ever again. Because I'm like, man, we lost the state championship games. Those are things that you always hold on to. So she was like, I didn't think he was serious. And I'm like, later I see her at the party. I'm like, why are you still here? So that's how our first date, time of conversation started. Fast forward, we become really good friends, and we developed a great friendship. And I can't stress this enough to anybody that wants to have a great marriage. Develop a friendship first before the other aspects of what a relationship we perceive to be important develop into it. We became great friends. We talked. We talked for long hours and things like that. Never had kissed her, never, dated her in college or anything like that. I'm recruiting Columbus. I'm working out at Lifetime Fitness on Polaris Parkway. She's coming off an elliptical. I'm coming off the bench. I see her. I said, hey, long time no see. You want to grab dinner? Yeah, great. So we grabbed dinner as friends. Conversations continue to lead. Next thing you know, we're at St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. I'm down on a knee asking her to marry me. And fast forward, we've now lived in a couple different places with two beautiful children, my daughter, Lenore Maria, and my son, Bronco. And we call her little Lenny and Bronco, but that's how we met. And it's been a great ability to uplift me every single day. And I'm blessed to have her.
Well, Coach, I think that right there is the perfect place to stop. I think it's a great place. That's a good place to send it off. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us. For those of you staying, wow, I should probably stop punching my microphone. That would be better. For those of you staying over for the editorial with Serenity Brown, we'll be right back. This has been Coach Tom Zagorski, the new head coach at Otterbein, and best of luck to you this season. And you might see us out there. You might. We're starting to put our schedule together. We're putting a schedule together for this fall. We're going to do 10 games. So
wonderful. We'd love to have you anytime you want to come into Columbus. We're a beautiful city. We're one of the best cities in America right now. Top 3 cities for young professionals to live in. Opportunities abundant. Come hang out. We've got great food. We got great drink. We got great people. We'd love to have you here. So thanks again, and soar higher.
Thank you, Coach. Have a good day. What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is the editorial with Serenity Brown, which you would have known if you watched the end of the episode, because I did not finish the episode. But she's Serenity Brown. This is the editorial, and that's how we're kicking it off. So go ahead.
Long one. I think we definitely need to pay attention to the clock a little bit better. I know that he didn't really give much of an opportunity just to stop. That's okay. I just think going forward, we need to make sure we get a rein on that.
Everybody has a story to tell. I'm just quoting.
Tell it a little quicker.
I'm just quoting I'm quoting the intro. Guy who says everyone has a story.
And then our audio, not on our end, really, on his end, cut out in quite a few places, but he kind of just.
He rolled through it.
So there was nothing really.
And we're excited to see where Otterbein and Coach Z. He said a lot. It wasn't. There was not a wasted minute for those that watched. He said a lot of things over that time. I could run through a brick wall for that guy. I mean, he's very passionate. He's what'd you call? Old-timey politician almost. He has a very good way of communicating his message. It is a time. It was a little long, but like I said, everybody has a story to tell. But for those of you that have been around with us, thank you. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like button. Maybe subscribe. It'd be nice. It helps us out. Also, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else you get your podcasts, we appreciate you as well. Make sure that you hit the little notification bar and like the episode. If you want to follow us on the social medias, which I don't get to do this anymore because we're not having a battle with some random guy that has wild dogs. But there's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter. The only one that's different is the Instagram page, which is Dingo_Talk. And Coach Z said a lot, as Serenity said, so we're not going to keep you any longer. We'll catch you next week, Chuckleheads.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Dingo Talk. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. For more info and to contact the show, you can find us on Twitter @DingoTalk.